Shortly before he died, I had the honour, and it was an honour, of talking to Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who in this country seems to be revered as a deep and thoughtful man, and a very kind and compassionate man. And he, at the time, told me that he was literally travelling around village to village, city to city, rural area to rural area, around Britain, talking to young people. He wanted to know two big things. How did they feel about the future, and what gave them their moral compass? He said and he said the answer to both, and this is 4 or 5 years ago now, were very interesting. He said they actually think it's going to be much tougher for them. They get it. They know that the West's economies are not doing well, and particularly in the poorer parts of Britain, they get it. That's interesting. But the one that I wanted to drill into, he said, most of them feel that they've not been given a moral story. They've not been given a moral compass. So what they've actually done is find someone in their life that they admire. At least you hope it's someone they admire. A grandmother or a wise old man down at the end of the street, and tried to say, well, I want to be like that person. But it's not actually a moral code, is it? It's not not giving someone a compass by which they can navigate their own lives.
No.
You've written a bit about this.
Yes, although we all do learn from each other, and identifying an older person in your life to look up to and try and live by their lights, I think, is a pretty good proxy for a moral code. What you hope is that there is a shared set of understandings that young people can tap into, but they will only do it through role models and through relationships. I don't think we can imagine, and it wouldn't be a good situation to sort of broadcast like the North Koreans through megaphones into every home and every classroom, telling people what to believe.
Except that once in this country particularly, you had probably the unifying influence of a broadly traditional Christian worldview, the strength of the Anglican Church.
Yes.
Love your neighbour, be a good citizen at the very least.
Yes.
And also do forgiveness and get on with people.
Yes. So
what's the substitute?
Yes. Well, there isn't one. That is the only one. And the old story has to be the new story. It just needs to be represented and made fit for the moment. And I think, I remain an optimist, even though in my book I talk, the first chapter is all about how terrible things are and how precarious we are. I do think you've got greater experience, Tom, but have you ever known a time when there feel like more existential threats to the well-being of our civilization?
Internal and external.
Yeah, and exactly. The old-fashioned threats, military ones, are back.
Yep.
But we have these new threats of sort of cultural dismantling that we've done to ourselves. So I think we are enormously at risk, even if some of the cataclysmic threats that we imagine, like climate change, might be overblown. There are enough dangers,
and quite enough.
So I think,
in fact, by focusing on the potentially the ones you just described as cataclysmic, we may actually be inviting other more immediate crises that mean we'll never be able to deal with. They'll become irrelevant.
Yes, indeed. So
it's that serious, in my view.
And I think exactly. So the responses to these threats. Climate change was one, but pandemics is another. The response to global health scares can be catastrophic too. So I think we need to be very careful. Likewise, the response to military threats that we see. So yes, the cure can be worse than the disease in many ways. But anyway, there are huge numbers of threats. Nevertheless, I remain optimistic, partly because I think that, as Gerald Manley Hopkins said, nature is never spent, and what the core of our being remains one of love, relationship, our commitment to each other, our sense of being created for a purpose, and we are instinctively about building networks, relationships, institutions which sustain our society. And I think people will always want to do that. And the other reason I'm hopeful is, paradoxically, I think modernity can help create the kind of, in many ways, the old-fashioned society that we all like. We talk about our rural constituencies, and I see in rural Wiltshire, technology developing opportunities for agriculture, which will produce the same yields that 40 years ago were produced through chemicals and pesticides and in a mass monoculture, disastrous agricultural practices, but nevertheless fed our growing urban populations. We can grow enough food to feed the world without wrecking the natural environment. And I do think we should be very concerned about the health of the natural world. I just think the whole climate conversation is misguided. We should be thinking about habitat the health of our soil and our water. And we can do that. We can feed the world in a healthy and sustainable way using technology. So there's all sorts of positives. And then you create a community that is the sort that a good conservative would want. It's beautiful, it's settled, people are living locally, they're eating local produce, they're having a family life, they're taking part in their neighborhoods. It might feel quite old-fashioned, but actually it's enabled by modernity. And so the modern world could be so much better. It could be fairer, more equal, more just, more free than any society that we've ever had. So I believe in the positive message, and well done for setting this conference up with that spirit. You're not just trying to call attention to all kind of threats. You're saying that there is the opportunity there's real hope in this moment, but we do have to stand up to the enemies within and without, and we need to correct the story that our culture is telling itself. But I think if we do that, we can have an abundant and just society.